I want to tell you about the morning I threw a wrench in the whole plan. We were packed. We had an 8-hour drive ahead of us. We needed to stop and visit our son at college on the way home. Everything was mapped out. And I looked at my husband and said, I need to go back. I needed to go back to a dirt road, to a piece of land I had only visited once when I was too little to remember it. Back to the place where my grandfather is buried, where my father grew up, where my family's name is literally on the road signs. My husband looked at me, smiled, and said, "Let's go." And that morning changed me, but we almost never got there at all. Welcome to A Beautiful Fix. I'm Tracy Hill. Each week we'll dive into the latest thought gem, recharging and reconnecting with what lights you up and makes you feel alive. Let's discover your next beautiful fix together. Hey, real quick before we dive in, you're powerful. And sometimes you just need someone to remind you what's already in you. That's what human design does. It's the difference between guessing and knowing. So you can stop searching outside yourself and start trusting the answers within. I promise you they're there. Grab your free chart at abeautifulfix.com, and when you're ready to go deeper, book a one-to-one session with me. All right, let's get into the episode. So here's how this trip came together. I have been following Sadhguru's work for a while now. If you don't know who he is, he's a world-renowned yogi and spiritual teacher out of India. His reach is global, and I had been curious about him, about his teachings for years. Then I found out he opened an institute in Tennessee. I genuinely thought it was a mistake. I double-checked. I Googled it 3 different ways. Surely this is not the same Sadhguru. People travel from all over the world to visit his ashrams. And there is one in Tennessee. And I say that with full love and respect for Tennessee because Tennessee, as it turns out, had a lot to teach me on this trip. So that was curiosity number 1 on the list. But the reason we were even going to Tennessee at all was something much more personal. My grandfather's land. My grandfather owned land in rural Tennessee. I had visited maybe once as a little girl, young enough that I don't really hold a memory of it, but I grew up hearing about it. My father was a masterful storyteller, and through his words, I felt like I had been there 100 times. I could picture it. My dad always used to joke that where he was raised in rural Tennessee, he would say that was where they invented dark. Like it was a whole new level of dark. He would talk about the snakes and the tall grass. And when he was little, his grandmother would always wait for nightfall. And then she would say, "Ooh, Bobby, I feel like a cool glass of water." Bobby was what my father was called when he was a little boy. And he would always think, why does she have to wait for nighttime? Because, see, he would have to go. We're not talking about going into the kitchen to simply open up a refrigerator. No, he had to go out to a well that was outside of his home, where he would have to walk through that tall grass with the snakes and the moon above, and so good. So anyway, when we decided to go, we were going to take one trip, 2 destinations, 2 things that we had been circling for a while. So we packed the car and we drove 8 hours to Tennessee. We arrived at the Isha Institute first. And the moment I stepped out of the car, I just felt something. The Isha Institute, it's 1,400 acres of yoga, and it's a meditation retreat, and it's tucked into the mountains of the Cumberland Plateau in McMinnville, Tennessee. beautiful part of the country. Think natural waterfalls, beautiful places to hike. And it was founded by Sadhguru, who is a yogi and a mystic, and he's one of the most fascinating humans I've come across in a long time. He has this long white beard. He's wise beyond his years, wonderful sense of humor, and he giggles like Santa Claus, and he rides a motorcycle. His work, it's rooted in ancient yogic science. It's not about religion, it is about going in. One of the quotes that I love by him is, "The way out is in." And if you've been around a beautiful fix for any amount of time, you know that this hits close to home for me. My entire mission is about helping women trust the wisdom that lives inside them. So when I tell you this place called to me, I mean it in the most literal sense. And that Tennessee location is the only center of its kind in the entire Western Hemisphere. People travel from all over the world to be there. And there I was, 40 minutes from my grandfather's land. At the Institute, the meals are vegan, which was wonderful for me, being a vegetarian. And you eat in community, at long tables, in silence, with people you've never met. John and I failed miserably. We totally talked our first evening there. We didn't know. We didn't see the signs that meals were in silence until once we were leaving. Oops. But when you finish eating, you wash your own dishes, and it felt like just participation, like you are part of something instead of just consuming. There's no loud anything. There's no unnecessary just noise to just fill space. It was nice. And the first evening, my husband and I visited the Adi Yogi, the abode of yoga. I'm going to do my best to describe this because meditation room does not come close to this experience. The space itself has been intentionally prepared to do something to you, regardless of your beliefs, background, all are welcome. And we were clueless. We knew so little about anything that was going to take place once we got to the Isha Institute. We just knew we wanted to go. So two women kind of befriended us as we were walking in and started to tell us, men go on that side, women go on this side, ring the little bell. And we were just following along. When we went inside, there were people seated. Looked like they were just deep into meditation. And this woman just kind of took me under her wing. I just sat there and she turned around and said, "Here, come with me." And next thing I knew, I was standing kind of at the front of this room. And I did not know what to expect. And she just started to quickly tell me, okay, when we go up there, there were these people that were kneeling. And there was almost like a water ceremony. And she was like, okay, you just go there. You pour the water from this copper vessel. You hold it, I think, in your left hand. You pour the water into your right hand and just kind of go from there. And I was like, yeah, I asked her if I could go up there with her. She's like, no, you have to do this alone. And so I did it. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was even happening, but I knew whatever it was that I was witnessing was special. And I wanted to honor it, and I didn't want to get it wrong. So I tried to remember everything that she told me. I'm pretty sure I messed it up. I think I held the vessel in my right hand and poured the water into my left hand. I didn't know, but it was a really interesting experience. And then my husband pointed out to me that I think you were supposed to just back up away from this ceremonial place, but I think I turned around. So I messed the whole thing up. But even still, I felt like I got a lot from it. And the whole experience just reminded me that there are ways of living in the world that I have never tried. There are traditions that have existed for thousands of years that I know nothing about. And there is something so humbling about being a complete beginner, about walking into a room and knowing nothing, and about letting that just be okay. I think we forget how it feels to be new at something, to let ourselves be the student again, the new kid, the freshman. And so the second day, we decided to head out to my grandfather's land. finally. And I want to paint you a picture of where this land is. And I'm going to kind of draw from the comedian Cedric the Entertainer. He did a bit about this. So you get off the highway, then you get onto a smaller road, then a smaller one, then smaller still. I'm talking about rural Tennessee. As in, the surrounding area is called Browntown Road. There's a Browntown church, and my maiden name is Brown. My father's name, my grandfather's name. That's how deep in this is. So naturally, it started to rain the moment we set out to go on this excursion. I'm talking serious rain, the kind where the windshield wipers can barely keep up. I started praying we weren't going to encounter a tornado kind of weather. And that's when Mr. No showed up. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, I've probably introduced you to Mr. No. He's the voice in my head that shows up whenever I'm about to do something that matters. He's not a villain exactly. He thinks he's protecting me, but his protection has a price. That day on those back roads, Mr. No was screaming. And I mean screaming. Why was I so afraid? You might be wondering. Well, I am an African American woman with her husband driving deep into remote southern roads in the rain, not knowing a single soul, not knowing who owns the surrounding land, not knowing who we might encounter or how they might feel about us being there. If you know, you know. So this all stems from trauma I experienced when I was 12, also in the South, in Pleasant Grove, Alabama. And that's a whole nother episode, but the blatant racism I encountered on that day as a 12-year-old from adults, letting me know I was not welcome, still lives with me. So the fear was real. This was a very specific, very grounded fear rooted in very real history. And Mr. No knew exactly which buttons to push. You don't belong here. Keep moving. These people are going to follow you with a shotgun and a Confederate flag. We saw several, by the way, on our drive to the property. Let's go. And I listened. We drove past the property. We didn't quite stop. We slowed down, but we didn't really stop. We couldn't see much through the rain. I could see what kind of looked like a fenced-off area. There was one home located there. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't set foot on the land. I just convinced myself that I had seen enough. I came all that way, and that was enough. Well, that night, I could not sleep. I lay there in the dark, and two words just kept coming. Go back. Go back. These two words would not leave me alone, no matter how many times I tried to close my eyes and just let it go. So in the morning, I told my husband I needed to go back one more time before we left. We had a long drive to get back home. We had plans to stop and visit one of my sons at college. The whole plan was mapped out, and I threw a wrench in all of it. He didn't hesitate. He just said, okay. So we drove back out to those roads, and this time the sun was out. It was mid-morning light. Everything was bright and clear. It looked much differently on this day. And I told Mr. No he was going to have to take an extreme backseat that day because I was going to step foot on that land. I had every right to be there. That was my grandfather's property. He is buried there. My father grew up there. My name is on the road. Nobody, not even me, was going to stop me. We pulled up, and first, I just sat in the car. I didn't move for a long moment. I tried to take it all in from the car, from the window. And there was this house that was right across from the property, and I wasn't sure who lived there. Wasn't sure if he considered this land maybe his. It had been sitting there vacant for so long. And I'm sure any car that wasn't kind of a regular car stood out in this area. And I can respect that. But then I decided, I am going to hop out. I got the strength to open that car door and to get out. And to stand on the land and to not care about what would come next. I took it all in. The land, the air, the quiet. And then came the roller coaster of emotions. The tears began to fall. I felt sadness for a man I had never met. You see, my grandfather had been gone long before I was born. I think he was 48 years old when he passed. I felt joy and gratitude that I was here where my father grew up, where he played, where his unique sense of humor that would lead to him being one of the world's greatest cartoonist illustrators, where his outlook on life had all began. I did it. This moment that I wasn't sure would ever happen, I made it happen. I went back. I stood on the ground that belongs to my family, and Mr. No did not win that day. Shortly afterwards, John came and tried to console me because I was pretty emotional. I was feeling all the emotions, and he put his arm around me, which of course made me only cry harder. And that's when I heard someone coming. Took a deep breath and I turned around and I heard someone calling out, "What's going on?" Couldn't tell yet if he was friendly, but he seemed like he was friendly. There was a comfort that just kind of came. All that fear just kind of subsided. John walked over to him, being the friendly person that he is, introduced himself, said, "Don't mind my wife. She's kind of crying." And he was like, "What is going on?" And I said, "I think this land is my grandfather's." And he said, "Well, what is your name?" And I said, "Well, my name is Tracy Hill, but my maiden name is Brown." And there it was, that smile, that knowing. He said, yes. He asked me my grandfather's name and said, yes, this is his land. And he led us onto that property. I couldn't believe it. My heart was so full. It was so open. I felt so safe. And I took it all in. I did look for those snakes, though. I did look for those snakes that my father had always told me about. But he led me on the land, and we were just walking. And I'm just smiling and just looking at everything. I didn't quite know where we were going. I didn't care. And suddenly I realized he was taking us up to a fenced-in area. And as I stood by the fence and looked down, I realized it was my grandfather's resting place. He was there. This man that I'd only heard of through my father's stories was there. I didn't think I'd ever see it. I thought if I ever made it to the land, it would certainly be overgrown. I didn't know who would be caring for it, who would be maintaining it. I didn't think it would be something you could just find, but it was there. There were actually 3 tombstones. One was clearly marked. The other 2, there was no writing. It looked like slate, just slate stones, and I knew that one of those was his. I was overwhelmed. The gratitude was just beyond at this point. It was surreal. This was beyond what I'd hoped to find on that day. And John he continued to, talk. I could no longer hear what they were saying. I was just staring at this tombstone. From there, he just filled us in on all of the Browns that were there, that had been there, that were in that general area. He was telling me about how much family I had in that area, and about all the people that own land that were family. And I was just, once again, just kind of taking it all in. And then shortly afterwards, we saw a beautiful John Deere tractor come down that road. And he said he knew exactly who that was. It was Jeff. And I had been talking to my mom about Jeff, and I knew that he was also family. And I had hoped that I would meet them, but it hadn't worked out. And there he was. Oh my gosh, going down that road. And so he made a quick call to him, and sure enough, you saw the tractor turn around, and he came back down, and he stopped, and he hopped out and had the most beautiful smile. And it was just like a movie. I mean, these were like characters from a movie. I had encountered once something that was traumatizing and stayed with me even to this day, but I will say the other part of the South is you will meet the kindest people also. And he was just that. And I got a chance to meet more family. I think he's my second cousin. So it was just more than I had bargained for, and an amazing moment. It was certainly a beautiful fix. So after that, a few days later, when, I had been home and was trying to just take it all in and make sense of what had happened, just think about how everything just worked out so beautifully, I started thinking about all the other times that Mr. No has won. Not just that rainy day, but all the days, all the trips I didn't take, the rooms I didn't walk into, the experiences I talked myself out of before I even gave them a chance. How many beautiful fixes have I missed because the voice in my head was louder than the one that said go? I don't have an answer for that. I sat with that question and I just let it be uncomfortable because I think it's important. I think we owe it to ourselves to ask it. Mr. No has kept me safe. I'm sure of that. But he has also kept me small in ways I am only just starting to count. And I don't want to keep counting. So here's what I want to leave you with today. Is there a place calling you? A tradition you've been curious about, a version of experience that lives just outside your comfort zone? Maybe it's a spiritual practice you've been circling. Maybe it's a piece of your own history you haven't gone back to yet. Maybe it's just something completely new that you keep finding reasons not to try. What would it feel like to be a beginner again? To walk into something knowing absolutely nothing and let that be the whole point. This week, I want to invite you to do one thing, just one. Think of the place, the experience, the thing you've been meaning to do, and take one small step toward it. Just one step in the direction of yes. Because curiosity will take you places your comfort zone never would, but you have to actually go. And sometimes you have to go back. So, I'll see you next week, and until then, keep getting high on life, one beautiful fix at a time. Thanks for listening to A Beautiful Fix. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a quick review to help others find us. And if you'd like to share your own beautiful fix or join me as a guest, reach out anytime at tracy@abeautifulfix.com. Looking forward to next time.